is being expanded at the Juba International Airport to mitigate the risk of cross-border disease spread and minimize the risk of travel, trade and public health security. The facility is being supported by the government of Japan and the World Health Organization and the African Development Bank. The South Sudan's Minister of Health, Elizabeth Achei Yol, says the port health facility will help the country's capacity to detect, assess, report and respond promptly and effectively to public health risks. She described as an important infrastructure to addressing South Sudan's recurrent epidemic and other public health and humanitarian emergencies. The over $160,000 Public Health Emergency Operations Center will comprise of infrastructure, furniture and equipment. It will be a hub that brings together, under the umbrella of the Ministry of Health, all relevant experts, groups and stakeholders involved in preparedness and response. World Health Organization says this will greatly improve multi-agency coordination and improves operation efficiency through information sharing and joint decision-making. It, however, urged the ability of the facility to effectively function depends on appropriate design and infrastructure. This also includes staffing and command structure, plans and procedure developed prior to the event. The establishment of the port health facility at the Juba International Airport is described as a significant milestone towards South Sudan meeting its obligation under the International Health Regulation of 2005. The purpose of the regulation is to prevent, protect against, control and provide a public health response to the international spread of disease in ways which avoid unnecessary interference within international traffic trade. South Sudan believes that the facility at the Juba International Airport will enhance its preparedness and response capacity to address these health challenges. You are listening to iReady News. Nearly 1,000 candidates will miss the primary leaving examination which commenced this morning. According to the Ministry of General Education, a total of 75,000 primary school candidates were registered for this year's PLE exams. However, as stated by the Minister Awut Deng, 908 pupils in 7 centers will miss the examination due to access problems and insecurity. This includes 98 pupils in Nasir, 220 in Lokchok, 61 in Akobo, 223 in Fangak, 109 in Ayod, 141 in Nyerol and 154 in Tonj East. Last week, the Minister of General Education revealed that candidates in SPLM-IO controlled areas would not sit the 2020 primary leaving examinations due to insecurity, a claim the SPLA-IO denounced. Speaking during a media briefing yesterday, Ms. Deng said,
"We had a few challenges of insecurity, and I would like to share those areas that were affected. We have divided them now into 2, but in general, we had about 14 areas that we had security concern, but the rest have been resolved. One is the list of the areas with security concern that should be addressed before the exams are sent over. One is Nasir with 95 candidates. 2 is Langichuk with 220 candidates. 3 is Akobo with 61 candidates. 4 is Bangak with 223 candidates. 5 is Ayut with 109 candidates. 6 is Nyerul, 141 candidates. 7 is Tonj East with 154 candidates.
However, she went on to say the affected candidates will be able to sit for their examinations on a later date if there is access and good security.
We didn't even want to have a second plan. because we wanted our children to have examination at the same time. But when there are uncertainties like this, we always have a second plan for examination to take place. Yes, we have a second plan, and if the environment is created even today, we will be able to deliver the examination to where the centers are. Ours is just mainly security of personnel who are supposed to take this examination to the areas, security of the examination itself so that they don't end up in social media. It is important that South Sudan has a credible result about the assessment of their children. There is no way that we cannot allow these children to have exams, which is an international practice.
A 5-day peace conference between Dinka Malwal of South Sudan and Misiria of Sudan has ended with calls for adherence to peaceful coexistence between the two border communities. Chiefs, women and youth representatives from the two sides met in Awil last week, where they discussed issues related to biannual peace dialogue along the Sudan-South Sudan border. Lasuba Memo has more.
William Kolong Pioth is the coordinator for South Sudan Peace Commission in Northern Bahar el-Ghazali State. Addressing reporters in Awil on Friday, Kolong described the peace conference as fruitful.
It was a very fruitful 5-day discussion which we ironed out the outstanding issues regarding the two tribes. The 2 days were for the forced migration and the 3 days were for the pre-migration, which we have set the new rules and the new guidelines that will guide them throughout 2021. A lot of resolution change this year. We have a new resolutions that the chiefs have come up with, of which the compensation of any stolen cow or any blood compensation, they were adjusted accordingly. They had also a penalty of the criminals. Whoever caught stealings, they have the numbers of days that they should be arrested. For those who commit crime like killing people, they will also pay the compensation.
Among the resolutions, the participants agreed that the blood compensation shall be 31 heads of cattle, 16 heifers, and 15 bulls, a fine of £150,000 or its equivalent, and legal procedures shall then follow. Others include a blood compensation for mothering pregnant women, which shall be 64 heads of cattle, of which 31 heads of cattle shall be blood compensation for the woman and 15 for the unborn child, and a fine of 150,000 South Sudanese pounds. And in case of any wounded person whose part of the body is damaged, they shall be compensated with 15 heads of cattle and a fine of 100,000 pounds. Above all, if somebody rapes a woman from either community, he shall pay 10 heads of cattle and a fine of 100,000 pounds. Therefore, to minimize theft, any person who steals a cow, sheep, goat, or donkey shall be arrested and required to return the stolen animal and pay a fine not exceeding 100,000 South Sudanese pounds. The 5-day people-to-people grassroots peace conference was held under the theme Promoting Sustainable Peace and Cohesion among Sudan and South Sudan border communities. For iRadio, I'm Lasuba Memo.
You are listening to iRadio News, and before the international scene, the special representative of the Secretary General says the slow pace of implementing reforms as set out in the revitalized peace agreement will likely affect the conduct of elections in South Sudan. David Shearer urged political parties to accelerate efforts to generate unified forces, form state and county institutions, reconstitute the national legislature, and finalize the constitution so that elections can take place. The UN's top envoy in South Sudan acknowledged the positive progress made by political parties in the past year, including the formation of the transitional government and the appointment of the Upper Nile state governor. He, however, told a plenary meeting of the reconstituted Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission in Juba that the pace of implementing the 2018 peace deal has been too slow. Mr. Shearer stated that this has heightened doubts and frustrations and also opened opportunities for spoilers to exploit local tensions. There has been a recurrent intercommunal violence in several parts of the country, including Jonglei, Pibor, Lake State, Warrap, Unit, Upper Nile, and Central Equatoria states. The UN has partially attributed these substantial acts of violence to failure by the leaders to restore durable peace and invest in basic service that encourage stability and sustainable development. David Shearer expressed fear that the situation may deteriorate further as national actors middle and fuel local level violence. He said accelerating the implementation of the peace agreement would encourage displaced people to return home, enable South Sudanese to pursue livelihood opportunities, and lay the foundation for free and fair elections. You are listening to IRID News, and now to the international scene with my colleague Rosemary Wilfred.
Good afternoon, Kelly Abale, and thanks for joining us, for you all the listeners. Now to the international scene. Let's start from the neighboring Sudan. Sudan's Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok on Sunday dissolved the cabinet and is expected to announce a new one on Monday. In a statement, the Prime Minister's office said the ministers will remain in office until the new ones take office and hand over. And then when handover is done. Sudan has been under a transitional council since 2019 when former President Omar al-Bashir was ousted. The country is moving towards democratic rule after the removal of al-Bashir, who had been president for nearly 30 years. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has warned of what he described as harsh and appropriate action against irregularities in coronavirus-related tenders. In his weekly newsletter to the nation, Mr. Ramaphosa said government agencies had been directed not to make payments to the service providers pending the outcome of investigations or court action. He said, and I quote, "They will not get to enjoy their ill-gotten gains as steps have been taken to recover stolen money, including the freezing of bank accounts." A report released last year into the country's use of COVID-19 relief fund revealed our overpricing and potential fraud. And lastly, Somalia has missed a key deadline to hold a presidential election on 8th February, plunging the country into political uncertainty. The first term of incumbent President Muhammad Abdullahi Farmajo ends on Monday. Talks between the federal government and regional states on how to proceed with elections collapsed on February 5th. In a statement on Monday, opposition presidential candidates said they will cease to recognize Mr. Farmajo as president because his term had expired. That's all with the international news, and back to you, Kelly Abale.
Thank you, Rosemary Wilfred. And for stories making headlines in the world of sports, here is my colleague Okot Emmanuel.
Welcome to iReady Sports, and look at the latest in the continent. Morocco became the first team to successfully defend the African Nation Championship trophy with the 2-0 wins over Mali in Cameroon on Sunday. The Moroccans were made to work hard for their wins, and both of their goals came from second-half corners in front of around 6,700 fans at the Almadou Ahidjo Stadium in Yaoundé. Sofiane Bouftini headed home the first, and that was followed up by another from Ayoub El Kabi, who scored 9 goals in 2018 to help Morocco win the title on home soil. To make matters worse for Mali, they finished the game with 10 men after the dismissals of Isaka Samake for his second yellow cards as the game went into injury times. Confederation of African Football Champion League winner Al Ahly FC are just 90 minutes away from face Mexican Tigers in the Club World Cup finals. Al Ahly faces FC Bayern Munchen in the second semi-final later on Monday, do the finals on Thursday. Meanwhile, Andre Pierre Gignac was Tigres' hero once again as the Mexican stunned Palmeiras to become the first CONCACAF team to reach a FIFA Club World Cup finals. Ricardo Ferretti's side were good value for their surprise win and will now face off for the title against either FC Bayern Munchen or Al Ahly SC on Thursday. Palmeiras went into the game as favorite but struggled throughout and were indebted to goalkeeper Weverton for keeping the score blank in the first half. 3 times the Vadoa number 1 displayed excellent reflexes to deny Tigres, with the peak of his save a superb instinctive stop to tip wide from Gignac Carling goals, bound right foot shot. And moving on to Europe, Manchester City took a potentially decisive hold on the Premier League title race as they trust Liverpool at Anfield. Helped by a virtuoso performance by Phil Foden and a nightmare display from the champions goalkeeper Alisson. City's comprehensive triumph, the first at Anfield since 2003 and Pep Guardiola's first away to Liverpool as a manager, was achieved in such comfort that they were able to recover from Ilkay Gundogan's first half penalty miss. Gundogan, who skied his spot kick after Fabinho fouled Raheem Sterling, made amends when he put City ahead 4 minutes into the second period after Alisson could only push out Foden's shot. Mohamed Salah equalized for Liverpool from the spot just after the hour after he was hauled back by Ruben Dias, but then came the combinations of Alisson errors and Foden's genius as the Horse were rant rage. Thanks for listening to iReady Sports. My name is Okot Emmanuel.
You are listening to iReady News, and to end this bulletin, here are the headlines once again. The World Health Organization says South Sudan has seen a 30% rise in coronavirus infections among citizens last week. A 5-day peace conference between Dinka Malwal of South Sudan and Misiria of Sudan has ended with the call for adherence to peaceful coexistence between the two border communities. And nearly 1,000 candidates will miss the primary leaving examinations which commenced this morning. That's the end of iRadio Afternoon News. You can also get these updates and stories by subscribing to iRadio News Alerts on your MTN South Sudan number. Call 700 or dial star 700 hash and follow the instructions. If there is a story or an event you'd like iRadio to cover or report about, please send us a text message on +211 912 986 986. It's also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on Twitter at iRadio Juba. Like our Facebook page, iRadio. You can also visit our website and listen to us online at www.iradio.org. Stay tuned for the news in Arabic at 1:30. I am Kelly Abale. Thanks for listening.